Welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled BrightID AMA. The topic is whatever people want to talk about, whatever questions you may have, whatever's current and new and exciting. So yeah, with that, I thought I saw a hand up. Who was that? That I don't see the hand anymore. Was that Vincent? No. Who had their hand up a minute ago? It was Vincent. Okay, go ahead, Vincent. Ask your question.
Not hearing anything though. You're muted, Vincent.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. I want to verify my BrightID account.
How do you verify your BrightID account? Great question. So what app are you trying to use with BrightID?
I'm trying to use trying to connect to like 3 different accounts. I connected to BrightID Discord also.
I didn't hear that. Could you say it again?
I'm trying to connect to BrightID Discord.
Oh, okay, you want to get the verified role on BrightID Discord?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what you need to do, I'm going to mute you for a minute. So what you need to do to get that verified role on BrightID Discord, and there's something like 1,300 Discord servers that have that verified role, so you can get that on all of those servers. I have not been to anywhere close that many servers on Discord, so I don't know what they're all doing with BrightID. Some of them may be actually just playing around with it, not really seriously using it. But anyways, the way you get your BrightID verified role, first thing you need to do, it uses what's called the meets verification. And the way you get the meets verification is you go to a meet. So it's meet.brightid.org and check the calendar. There's several every day. There's different languages. Sounds like you have no problem with English, so you'll probably go to the English one. So here's the link for that. And yeah, go to one of those connection parties. So this is not one. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we're not going to be making connections here. Otherwise, you could get verified just by connecting with the people in here. Someone will tell you more about BrightID, kind of like what I've done at the beginning, maybe tell you some of the do's and don'ts of using your BrightID account. And then after that, you'll make a connection to the host. And then it usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the BrightID nodes to pick up on the new connections and process them and give you your verified sticker. Then you go onto the servers that you want. I would recommend trying a different app first besides just Discord. So there's another interesting link, which is apps.brightid.org. I'll paste that in here too. apps.brightid.org. You can find out some apps. So try several of them. I mean, just look at them. If any of them look interesting, I would try at least one of those. I can definitely recommend Gitcoin, Rabbit Hole, the ED Faucet as like good beginner ones that should be pretty easy to set up. And then once you try out one of those, they'll also sponsor you, which is something that you currently need to get the Discord verified role. And then there's a special channel, usually on every server you go to. There's one on our server. There's a special channel called Get Discord Role After Verification. You just go in there and it tells you the commands that you have to type in. And then you scan the code that the bot puts up, and then you get the verified role. So you're probably not going to remember everything I said. There's instructions on how to do everything I said in the Discord. And so, yeah, follow those instructions and you should be fine. Any questions about that?
Okay, I get what you said. I'll follow through. Thanks very much.
Okay, yeah, good luck. I hope to see you verified today. Okay.
Sure.
Hey guys, my app doesn't allow me to put a hand up, but just if you have room for another question? I'm happy to ask one. Great. So thanks for that intro. I just did my first verification today. Just went to the meeting a couple hours ago. So very happy to be a new member. Thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for having me. The first question is, do you guys think of yourselves as being Sybil proof or Sybil resistant? Like, I understand that the in-person verification, the first level, and then the B2 level by someone that's already been verified. Is that enough to be Sybil proof, or is that Sybil resistant? Like, if you give a percentage to, like, how many Sybils do you think go to a B2 level? I don't know,
Yeah, so I would
say, be answered by.
I would say so. So here's the thing that's notoriously difficult about Sybil attacks is it's hard to know how bad your problem is, and so you might think, oh, everything's fine when it's really not. So you might think, oh yeah, well, I've got 1 million users and they're all real people, and you might not know that you have a problem. So it's funny because the problems tend to kind of manifest themselves in other ways when the attacker slips up. So if an attacker is doing a perfect job of not making themselves known, you might have a Sybil problem and not even know it. Yeah. So there's that. So because of that, okay, and then there's also kind of like a range, which you've already noticed. So you're already a more advanced user because you've already been researching the different options. So there's always this trade-off because you're going to have some false positives and some false negatives. And so you have to look at your particular app, your particular use case for BrightID, and you have to decide whether you want to allow more false negatives or false positives. So in other words, do you want to which is worse? Which is a worse problem for you? Excluding real people who should be verified, or letting in bots? Like and you find a balance. So the meets verification, which you already have, that we believe, and it's certainly held true within the BrightID graph, that it prevents large-scale Sybil attacks. So you're not going to get an army of bots coming to your app if you require meets verification. So if that's what you're going for and you don't want to exclude real people, you just want to stop like bot armies from taking over. So that a good example of that is Rabbit Hole. Rabbit Hole is a learn to earn. And they're also thinking about ways to use higher level verifications, but they start out with the base level meets verification. And just one example of how effective that is for them. So there was one, so they use it to protect the learn to earn. So you take a quiz, that tests your knowledge. So you go through a course, you learn all about it. It's used by projects that want to increase their user base and bring in knowledgeable users who are going to contribute to their platform. So you learn all about this new platform, and there's a bunch of different quests you can do in Rabbit Hole. And then at the end, you take a quiz to prove that you were paying attention, that you actually learned the knowledge.
Even better, you do on-chain actions.
Oh yeah, you have to do the actions, right? And to prove that you've actually learned and can apply what they've taught you. So at the end of your quest, you do that. Now, if you're a Sybil attacker, you could come in with potentially an unlimited number of accounts. You're only limited by your scripting abilities, but you could just take that test over and over and over again now that you know the answers. So to prevent that, they use BrightID. And one time they forgot to turn it on for one of their quests, and bots immediately came in and claimed everything. And they thought, like, what just went wrong? Like, what's going on? Then they realized, oh, oops, we forgot to enable BrightID for this one. So they had to basically reset it and do it again. So there's that level of verification. And then there's the higher ones where it's like, okay, these are going to take some more time. You're not going to be able to get it in a day. And some people, like, we're having complaints with B2 where people are saying, like, I have no idea how I'm ever going to get this. Like, I just don't see a path to getting B2 for myself. So it's like it's kind of like the other extreme. So, and then we're trying to develop other things that are kind of like in the middle there. So do you have any follow-up questions on that now that I kind of laid down the basics?
Yeah, you don't have any plans on ever adding like a national identifier or a government issued ID as a complement or anything like that?
So let me talk about some experiments that did that. There was a really interesting one that I found out about 3 years ago called UBIC, UBIC. And one of the interesting applications of Sybil having something that's Sybil resistant is if you've got a really strong level, like that's kind of our goal for BrightID, is to have something that is as easy to get as the meets verification, but is as strong enough that you could trust it with tens of thousands of dollars per person, like a government scale UBI. And so going back to like what people have done with the government IDs. So a lot of governments have e-passports now, and e-passports are interesting because there's an authority that provides a digital signature on your e-passport, signing the data that's on there. So when you, so before they mail you your passport, they will use one of their signing keys, which they rotate and maybe have like multiple signing keys they can use, but they'll use one of their signing keys and sign your passport, and then put that into the passport in a can't remember if it's a chip or a barcode because I haven't used it in a while.
It's
but
NFC, it's near field communication.
Okay, thank you, near field. Okay, so the NFC chip has that signature, and it has part of your data is signed that way, so that you can go and prove to someone that you have certain that the government at least thinks that you, the bearer of this passport, has these certain attributes, and they're willing to sign that you do have them. So that's interesting. And so someone said, well, let's make I figured out how to automate this. Let's make a token and distribute the token to only people who can share anonymously. So that's a nice thing about it, is you can actually share that you have a signature from a government without sharing the data, the actual data that's encrypted, so that you don't What was that?
As long as you live in one of those countries.
Right. So there's limitations. So the reason why there's several reasons. One of the reasons why I decided with BrightID not to go that route was because I'm not sure how the federation of different governments is going to work. Because right now I would say the most common use case is airport security, and you kind of have this multinational agreement going on between governments of how that's going to happen. I'm not sure that we would be able to reach something that would really be global, like or I'm not sure how that would play out. I don't understand that well enough to be able to say, like, let's go that route and let's try to solve it that way. So I would like people to, not have to, getting a passport is in the end game when it should be easy to get verified. I don't think that it's actually that easy. It's kind of expensive. It's kind of time consuming. I mean, you could argue, well, everyone's going to get one anyway for some other reason. And that's maybe the only thing that it's got going for it, is that people tend to have them for some other reason.
I recently had to go through an ID process. I needed all sorts of documents.
Yeah.
There's billions of the people in the world that have never even had those documents. They don't exist. I have a birth certificate. There's a bunch of people that don't. There is no birth certificate for that person.
Yeah, so that is an interesting route to go. Another major problem that I think is still true is many governments have not implemented it properly, and we just don't know the timeline of when that's going to happen. So that is a possibility. So I was happy that UBIC was experimenting with that. And I gave a critique of it because I noticed some issues. I don't think are necessarily their fault, just some of these issues, some of the ones that I mentioned and some other ones, some other more technical issues with it. And so I did post a critique on that, but I definitely encourage more experimentation. Like I want to see a bunch of other attempts. There's UBIC, there's IDENA is another interesting one that's trying something quite different than what we're doing. There's Dunitor, there's Circles UBI. So there's some really interesting ones. There's Proof of Humanity. So there's a bunch of different, good dollar, exactly. So yeah, we've had contact with all of these, and we kind of share knowledge with them, and we want them
on kind of collaborating. So you are providing
definitely
to a lot of the other partners right now, but you're not collecting identity back, right? Is there any plans of collaborating and collecting, verifying identity back from, like, say, a Proof of Humanity?
Yeah, so as far as Proof of Humanity, no, there's no concrete like sharing plans. There's kind of been like little talks here, especially from their end, because we don't feel like with BrightID that we really want a public registry with people's faces and like real names and stuff like that. We don't want a public registry. I don't think that actually adds to the solution, but I'm happy to see other people experiment, and both of those teams participate. There's kind of this overarching thing that has sprung up called the Humanetics Workshop. And the Humanetics Workshop is really interesting because it says, okay, this proof of unique human is a unique problem, is an interesting problem. We should solve it, but there's a lot of common concerns that all of these projects that are trying to solve this are going to face. Rather than having each one of them individually try to tackle these difficult problems, let's get them all together, get them to talk about what works, what doesn't work, what they've learned, etc. And so that's why we have this Humanetics Workshop, which I find really valuable. So you're welcome to join that as well. Let me post an invite to the Signal group. Actually, I think let me see if I can find, they also have a Twitter. It's a pretty small group. So let me paste the Twitter, because I think that's the most accessible. Yeah, there's only 125 followers, so it's really small right now. But like I said, it's kind of got the who's who of these identity projects all in the same place. So it's Humanetics _ is the Twitter. So I'll type that in here. So that's
Perfect.
Twitter, and yeah, follow them, and you'll kind of. They also have a Signal group, which you're welcome to join, you can learn about all the projects in one place right there. So that's a good way to do it.
Thank you.
So yeah, as far as collaborating, we do want to provide our social graph to any of these solutions that could benefit from it. Some of them, like IDENA, I don't see a path forward for collaboration, but some of them, like Proof of Humanity, we could definitely, I mean, we've talked about it with them a little bit. Once they get to the point where they feel like, okay, we're ready to add something new, they could say, okay, we have a registry, we have the vouching and the staking of money, and we also want to analyze the social graph that comes out of that. And so they could apply BrightID to that. Same with Circles UBI. So Circles has more, so we've gotten a little deeper into our collaboration, and they do want to kind of use the graph that comes from the credit lines that are extended between Circles UBI holders, and use the graph that comes out of that and analyze it using the BrightID platform. So I think that one will definitely happen. I hope Proof of Humanity, I hope that integration happens. And then also there's another, so you talked about importing verifications back into BrightID. As long as it can be done in a privacy preserving way, I think that that's possible. So one thing that I've mentioned a few times is we think that, so Gitcoin itself does a lot of its own anti-Sybil research that's kind of specific for its platform. So Gitcoin will analyze the behavior of their users on the platform, which is something BrightID doesn't do. It doesn't analyze behaviors of people on different platforms, but Gitcoin does. So they analyze the behaviors of their users, and they have other signals that they can use. They can look at patterns and say, okay, this is a suspicious pattern. And they give everyone a Sybil score, basically, like you're kind of like a probabilistic score of that this account is a Sybil, and they may deduct matching bonus based on how likely someone is to be a Sybil. So what we can do to make it self-sovereign and privacy preserving is we can make it opt-in, an opt-in feature where Gitcoin can sign a credential that says that you're a good Gitcoin citizen, so that you have an account that's not a Sybil, and then you can import that anonymously into one BrightID account. So you can kind of give that boost. Then if another if another application says, okay, as part of my BrightID verification, I want to know whether people are good Gitcoin actors or not, they can look at that. So I think that's an interesting way to approach it.
Yeah, really. Hey, unfortunately, I got to go. I only had half an hour.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent answer to my question, and
all
really
right.
happy to meet you guys. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for what you're doing.
really good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Mario, I saw you. Maro, I saw that you had your hand up. Would you like to ask a question? Go ahead and unmute if you want to ask your question, Maro. Okay.
Also feel free to ask questions in the chat if someone doesn't.
Yeah, you can type it in if you're having trouble. Might type in your question and we'll answer it. Kind of to build off that last question, in case other people want more information. So I think that like deciding whether or not someone is a Sybil and deciding how bad a Sybil attack is, it's interesting to have kind of this probabilistic approach that Gitcoin and BrightID use versus an approach that Glenn Weil has proposed with the intersectional social identity, which is saying that basically, rather than having a probabilistic approach, it's how much money I'm willing to stake on you, and so there, it's like, I'm this sure about you not being a Sybil, and this is how much money I'm going to put on that. So that's and that way you can kind of you can do a calculation. So you can kind of use stronger math to see, well, based on how much money people are willing to put behind this particular user in the system as not being a Sybil, we can get a measurement of how much value we can give to this account. So you can kind of get a feel for, is this system ready for how many users could, if we want to give a UBI that's worth $1,000, how many users are trusted up to $1,000, I guess you could say. So that's another interesting way to look at the problem. I have talked to Glenn about that. It was a while back. He published some things in 2019 on it. I will say that where I'm a little unclear how that's going to work is, let's say that I'm Sybil attacking and I've got certain signals, and because it talks about like taking a cross section of certain signals. So how do you like, how do you figure out which cross section to take? So that's where I think his solution wasn't meant to be fully baked. I think there he wants people to do more experimentation and build on it. But that's an interesting open question to me, is how do you figure that out?
Like
Because
money is such a tricky thing to wrap up in that, right? So it's like, okay, I have a bunch of rich friends, so they'd probably be willing to stake on me. But if you don't have people in your circle that have money, how would you? If you live in a poor country, there's this huge portion of people that don't have anyone that would be willing to stake material money because they don't have it. It's not that they're not deeply trusted. Money is not the way that you express your trust.
That's a really good point.
Most cultures, where we often allude to the aura game in these calls, where the thing that you're putting up is ephemeral. It's just like endemic to the system. Yet some people have more than others because they earned it. That seems better than dollars. It needs to be something that everyone potentially has access to and maybe doesn't have another use for. Because if you're like, ooh, should I eat or should I stake on someone?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that universal basic income unlocks a whole bunch of new possibilities. So I love universal basic income, and I think I don't want anyone to ever have to make that choice, like whether or not they're going to eat. I think that's So once you get past that, I think you can start playing. You have more leeway to play around with money. So Prince, you had a question. Go ahead, please. Or you can type it in. Oh yeah, welcome, Humpty. Prince. Okay, if you do have your question, you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it, or you can type it in. Yeah, so let's see. That was weird. Okay. So yeah, as far as so the aura game, we do want it to be, so it's interesting.
Yay!
Okay. Sorry, what were you saying? It was kind of loud. I couldn't. Try again. No? Okay, maybe try typing it in. Where it wasn't easy to understand you. Okay. Okay, he's having audio. Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead and ask your question.
Why did I drop it?
Sorry, you seem to be having audio problems. We're just go ahead and he's having connection problems. So anyways, yeah, the interesting thing about aura is it deals with something which is distinctly not money. It deals in something called energy. And the reward for being an aura player, and again, aura is a game where not everybody plays, but the people who do play help others to get verified. And kind of the currency in aura is energy, but it's distinctly not money. It really can't be bought and sold. So it could represent like monetary value, because some people who get BrightID verified use it to receive money. But it can also represent kind of like just the intrinsic value of helping other people. So I could see it showing up in different settings. So you could say, it could show up like, okay, I helped you get verified, I expect a tip. And hopefully it doesn't, it doesn't become something like, it feels like a loan shark or something like that. It's like, okay, I'm going to take 50% of any UBI you get or something like that. We definitely want to ensure that that's not happening. But it could be like, okay, you got some UBI, cool, like throw me a tip for helping to get you verified. Or it could be that, I helped you do the things that you wanted to do with BrightID, and I get to feel good about helping verified people in BrightID, and maybe there's no money involved. So it kind of leaves that flexible.
Adam, I want to double click on one thing you said. We once talked to a man from, I believe it was Nigeria, and one of his concerns is he said, look, the way it works in this community is that someone becomes like the broker, and you gotta like pay them if you wanna get in. And one of the ways that we hope to avoid that is, right, there's not a set person that you need something from. There's not any given gatekeeper. There are lots and lots of gatekeepers, and you can go through any of those gates. There's lots of gates and bridges. No one is essential to the path. And ideally, and this is in how BrightID Aura will score, is like the more paths there are that are different, that prove that represent that you're unique, the better. So great. I don't need any one of them.
Right. Yeah, you could be in a situation where you do need one of them, but that's kind of a precarious situation because if something happens, so let's continue with the example of this broker. So let's say in Aura there's an energy source, and that energy starts flowing, and let's say that the energy very, very quickly moves to like a lot of energy moves to Nigeria because there's a lot of new users coming in. So a lot of new users are getting verified there, and we realize, okay, we want to bring in more users over there. There's a need for it. So let's send more energy over there. So more energy is given to Aura players that focus on Nigeria. And let's say that we discover that one of them is just being abusive of that power, charging people money, like the other Aura players in that area are saying, like, this person over here is like being extractive. So if that were the case, they and also the kind of the upstream sources of energy could listen to that report and say, okay, yep, we've done our research, that is what's happening. We know some people that have gotten verified through this person. We've confirmed that is what's happening. Cut off the energy. That person no longer gets to do that. So there's that kind of like social responsibility to do things in a socially acceptable way. So yeah, we would hope that we can start out in places where that isn't the norm to do something like that, and kind of set the example, set the social norm, such that if you are doing something like that, like, you don't get energy. We'll find someone else who's not going to do that. But that's an interesting question, because it's like Aura itself is a very social game. Not everybody has to play Aura, but those players will definitely be paying close attention to each other and seeing what they do, and kind of set their own norms on how they interact with each other and how they send each other energy. Any questions? We've had some really good questions so far. Any new like topics, things happening? Something I'm aware of is today's the last day of Gitcoin grants. So if you haven't done that yet, go in and get your Gitcoin account set up if you don't already have one. Get your trust bonus through BrightID, and find some really cool projects that you don't want to donate to. Donate to them, learn about quadratic funding and what it is. It's this really cool concept. And we're glad to help out with that with BrightID. And yeah, it's basically a democratic way, kind of like an anti-whale way to allocate goods or funding to public goods. So please check out Gitcoin. Today's the last day for the matching round. Let's see. What else? Oh yeah, so there was an interesting thing with Gitcoin that came up, which is that some people said, well, BrightID had a token launch. They launched Bright token, so that means that they shouldn't be applying for grants anymore. And we said, so they disputed. Actually, some folks from Gitcoin asked me, they said, hey, you know, our method up to this point has been like, we, the stewards of Gitcoin, just make a decision. And we know that would pass, but we want to try out this new dispute process and use you as the guinea pig. So they asked us back in December, and I agreed to that, thinking, okay, yeah, you know, this will take a month. It's fine. We don't need the funds immediately. And but anyways, it dragged on for months, and I still don't think they have. I mean, they're still working on it, but there's a dispute resolution process. I don't think that this decision so far has really changed. Maybe it's changed the precedent. I think before it was just like, if you have a token, any token, you can't be a part of Gitcoin grants. I think now it's sort of changed to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think they made a change that says, okay, if the token has a $20 million market cap, or you've raised more than $50,000 in VC funding, then you can't be part of the match, which I think is better.
500K.
500K. Okay,
Yeah,
so wow,
I
that's
don't think
really
they formally made that decision, but that's
okay. So that's kind of up for discussion.
That's right.
Still.
That's appears to be where it is headed.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Humpty's saying, funny, I was planning on developing an NFT game using DID and reputation and almost called it Aura. My podcast was denied. What do you mean your podcast was denied?
For Gitcoin.
Oh,
He wrote that right after you said Gitcoin.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, you should appeal it. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
I submitted it before the beginning of the round.
I'm
not going to derail the conversation, but
what was the name of the podcast?
Crypto Sapiens.
Crypto Sapiens got denied? Oh, I didn't even see that one come up.
It went through, and I guess because they do have a decentralized method of doing it, which I think is wonderful. It got denied because the Gitcoin or the GitHub accounts were suspicious, which I thought was funny because it's a podcast, so it doesn't need a GitHub account, but they required it anyways. And they're like, oh, it has like fork repos from like 6 years ago. I'm like, yeah, that's when I was playing with VR, like 6 years ago. Like, I don't use it anymore. They're like, it could be Sybil. And I'm like, my account has BrightID. Like, I am a verified human. Like, you could have checked all that, but no, you went and did that. I'm like, all right, fine. And I appealed it, but still nothing.
Okay, yeah, I'm guessing that eventually it'll get sorted out, and because what usually happens is they make a preliminary decision, and oftentimes they get it wrong, and then they have to do more research. So I mean, your podcast is fine. There's no reason why that's definitely a public good. It should be eligible. Yeah,
right.
So
and
it'll get worked out.
Yeah, and you just might need to be a squeaky wheel about it, but. The problem is, right, there really is a bunch of bullshit, scammy stuff that tries to get up there. So they need that first cut tool to get rid of the garbage that none of us want there. But unfortunately, that broad brush, hits things that shouldn't.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So what happens is that there's enough of these scammy projects that the first pass, they just have to say, okay, this is the first time we've seen this project. But we don't have a lot of, like, we've got to deal with 200 of these scammy looking projects. Let's just, if it's even possibly no good, and we just got to say no, because that's all they have time for. And then they come back, and the ones that bother to appeal, now it's a much smaller list. Now they can actually go and do some more in-depth research. So I'm confident that you'll get approved. It just will take a little while. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I actually wanted to talk about that other thing that I commented about first, called
sure, go ahead.
The Aura project.
Yeah,
obviously that's in the back burner because I tend to overextend myself. I'm like really like eager to like just build in this space. I'm like, oh, okay, what are you building? Okay, let's do that. What are you building? Okay, let's do that. But that's actually something that I think would have a lot of value in this space of identity and reputation. What I was, and I'm saying it loudly here, so if anybody wants to build it, please go for it, because I think it's a really fun project. But it would really be using kind of some of these different attributes of our identities as a way of informing our NFT. So one of the things that I always really wanted to see in this space was not just like PFPs that like we have to like dig around and see like what speaks to us, but instead like doing it the other way around, where like we inform the design of that NFT. And so the way that I was considering this was you would sign in to the platform, like you would sign in with your MetaMask or whatever, and it would look at your account and see if it had, for example, a BrightID associated to it, right? See if you have, I don't know, voted on Snapshot. I don't know, like just really trying to look at different meaningful metrics of Web3, seeing if you've contributed to a public good on Gitcoin. And all of these different things are like a brushstroke on your NFT. So that one thing could be the color, the primary color of your NFT. The other thing could be the background, or maybe a pattern that is on that NFT. And lastly, a combination thereof could inform the way that the NFT moves. So the animation of it would be informed by how many of these checkboxes you've ticked, right? It's like, oh, they ticked 5 out of 5. This is a rare attribute. So you have a rare animation associated to your NFT. And really the purpose of it is, it's kind of like the same thing we've been talking about in other discussions, where this badging of your participation is kind of like your aura, right? Like, or we can call it something else, right? It's your person, your personhood. And really you can prove that based on what you've minted on the other end, like what's come out. So I thought that was really interesting, going beyond just like generative NFTs and something that's generative, but meaningful.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, I think that would make a lot more sense to me. Like I would much rather use that as my PFP than like some, some of the other ones are cool, but like you said, it's not me. I mean, it's not, a CryptoPunk is not me. I mean, that's why I never bought one back in the day. I'm like, I'm just going to use my real face. I'm like, okay, NFTs are cool, but I'm going to, I don't need one of these. That, well, of course, I guess I now I do need one. I didn't know it back then. Anyways, but yeah,
definitely should have bought a CryptoPunk when they were like 0.01 Ether.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'm sure you knew about them back when that was true.
Oh, I did, yeah. But I did, and I knew about, yeah. Anyways, doesn't matter. But the thing is, like, it's like you said, it's got to speak to me. And like these Soulbound NFTs, yeah, they're worth $0, but that's what I want. I want one that's worth $0 that is like, but I can add a bunch of cool stuff to it that actually makes it look like me. And I think that that's a really cool idea. I posted a link about Soulbound Journals, because this is the Glenn gave a presentation and I shared it in the BrightID Discord as well on Soulbound Journals. And then there's this Gitcoin post about it that I shared right there. But the Soulbound, sorry, go ahead, Philip.
I just want to clarify one thing about Soulbound NFTs being valueless. They may not be sellable. That does not make them valueless.
Yeah, that's
I have a license. I cannot sell it to anyone, or like not legally, right? It has no sellable value. It has massive value to me, because if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be allowed to drive.
Yeah, really good point. Really
huge value, right? What if you did have to pay for that? Like, what would you be willing to pay for that? A lot, because of what it unlocks for you. So don't, or it's like you have your college degree, you can't sell it. It has no like transferable value, but it lets you. I mean, less and less value nowadays. But these things are important. So
yeah, definitely.
It's just not.
You're right.
Sellable.
So if the choice was to have, let's say that this NFT that Humpty's talking about automatically detected, okay, you're BrightID verified. Let's put like this tiny little, maybe like a little tiny little orange square somewhere or something like that. And that's your symbol. But let's say that let's say BrightID is more important to you and you want to have like a bigger BrightID icon on your profile picture. Then maybe you can do that by making a donation to BrightID, and that allows so you can kind of like level up by donating to public goods or doing other things that maybe do cost some money, and you can level up that way or not. Or maybe it doesn't have to be money. Maybe you can do something, like maybe if you're a BrightID power user, maybe if you have maybe if you're an Aura player, you get like a bigger BrightID, or maybe you get like BrightID and Aura, like this cool like combination symbol of like BrightID with Aura or something like that. So yeah, I mean, you can imagine all sorts of things like that. So yes, there can be money involved or not, but there can be lots of value involved. It can be actually used and accepted in places, kind of like a driver's license, and yeah, so it could have a lot of value for the user, but still not be transferable or sellable.
Yeah, I like the idea of just that type of project, because it really not just brings attention to these type of like, I guess, meaningful projects to me, right? Obviously completely biased here, because since I learned of like decentralized identity, I've just kind of fallen deep into that rabbit hole. But also,
Welcome to the club, Humpty.
Yeah, your fault, Philip. Thank you.
You're in good company here.
You gave me the
four of
shovel. But yeah, no, you know, so it brings attention to them, but really, it really allows us to play this positive sum game. Like, you know, we're not necessarily just saying go and buy this token or this NFT purely for the speculation of it. It's like, no, like, to earn this token, to get a more rare attribute, you got to go and do something that is like support a public good. Like, that helps everyone. Like, now you are benefiting, right? Because you see value in this. And so you're getting something that is rare, but you also, to get that, had to do something that benefited the ecosystem. So for me personally, that is super important. So to see something like that be created, it would be super interesting and valuable to me.
Yeah, definitely. That is the type of PFP that I would use in a lot of places. So the Soulbound Journals is really interesting, and we won't have time to go deep into it, but maybe we could have another AMA just on Soulbound Journals, and also I want to have another AMA we touched on it a little bit, the Gitcoin fraud detection team and what they do specifically to fight Sybils in their ecosystem. So I think we'll have some follow-up AMAs on both of those. But I encourage you to learn about the Soulbound Journals, because what a Soulbound Journal is basically saying, okay, we've gathered a bunch of attributes into one place that we can then take various intersections of and kind of use as a gatekeeper for various applications or DAOs or whatever. So that does raise a lot of questions with me, and I did ask them on this forum post in Gitcoin, which is like, you know, how do you decide which ones are relevant? How do you avoid saying, okay, we need to see all of your things at the same time, like because there's kind of like this desire of apps to be like, okay, just show me everything about yourself so that I can make the most informed decision. But that's not always good for privacy. So
it sounds like Facebook.
Well, yeah. Well, Facebook's even worse, because they take everything and they don't tell you what they're looking at. Like, they'll look at stuff that you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that Facebook could see that about me. Yep. So at least with something public on the blockchain, at least you would know what they're looking at, but it still might be like, oh man, do I really have to? And or the problem, like, people shouldn't, like, there's some things it's like, no, like, don't share that. Like, you shouldn't be sharing that. But apps are like, yeah, give me like, give me this data, and like, but and like people will kind of unwittingly give over too much data that they shouldn't be. So there's always that kind of privacy versus more info debate. So anyways, yeah, I encourage you to check that out. It's interesting. It's one of those things that it's like, okay, there's a lot of unknowns, but let's start building and see what we come up with. And sure, it'll have a lot of problems at the beginning, but you learn a lot from trying to actually build something. So I think that's kind of where we're at with the Soulbound Journals. So we'll see how that works. Anyways, I think we should end because we're coming close to time. We don't want to get in the way of any meets that use the same Zoom account. So yeah, future spaces events. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, invite some of the people from that have been talking about it. Let's see, who is it? Obviously Glenn and this guy Leon. I forgot his first. Is that his first name? Leone? I don't know. I don't even know how to say his name. Anyways, he was part of the presentation. But yeah, let's invite some people and talk about this stuff. That'd be fun. All right, y'all. And if you want to come here and talk about it, this is a good place too, as you've seen. So we're happy to talk about these type of things. All right, have a great week. Good to see everybody. Thanks for popping in and see you next time. Bye.
Bye, folks.